And if they can learn from that, I think it's okay having these errors now at the beginning of the season, but it's about learning from them and
learn quick. And it needs to start happening fast because, people are pretty ruthless in this league.
Definitely.
If we see another month of this, then you have to consider them serious top 4 contenders.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another episode of Monday Vibes. We're in the second week of the Premier League, and I'm so happy to be talking about it. But I'm also happy to be joined by Doogie Critchley and Michael McCubbin. McCubbs, how's your weekend, buddy?
Yeah, all right, thanks. Not too bad. How about you?
To hear it. Yeah, not too bad, thank you, mate. Not too bad. Lots of football going on, Doogs. How was yours?
Yeah, it was good.
Looking at a few venues, right?
Yes, looking at a wedding venue for next February for Grace and my wedding with her parents, which was very nice, but mainly just really getting very overexcited about the Women's World Cup final and then ending in quite a big disappointment. I think we're starting with that today. We might as well go straight into it. Yeah, England slightly outclassed, outplayed by Spain. Didn't think they created enough on occasion. They did hit the bar in the first half through Hemp.
Yeah.
But in the second half, as the game was going on and on, I just thought, England are going to start creating. Spain are going to get tired, but they just didn't. No. And they played through our press really effectively. And shout out Olga Carmona, their captain, who scored the winning goal after Lucy Bronze vacated her position and lost the ball. Lucy Bronze not at her best on this occasion, unfortunately. But Olga Carmona found out after the game that her dad had passed away on Friday. So an incredibly emotional weekend for her. And yeah, just an amazing achievement for her to score the winning World Cup final goal. And the Spanish players have been at war, or at least in a disagreement with their coach Jorge Vilda and the Spanish Football Federation for a lack of support. So massive respect to Spain. They also got thrashed by Japan earlier in the tournament. So to recover from that and win the World Cup, massive props to them.
Yeah, I think after the emotion of the final and obviously how built up it was here, and deservedly so, it was obviously the World Cup final. I think people did realise that Spain were the better team on the night. Like the finish, as you mentioned, I kind of felt there was a chance for Lucy Bronze. I know people said obviously she kind of went into where space was going away from her. There was a chance to go and pass it towards the left back, and then she decided not to, and then obviously got tackled. The finish is incredible. A shout out to Mary Herbst. Mary Herbst was incredible in goal. She made some fantastic saves in this game, and I think it's incredible like how things like this work out. Obviously before the tournament, you couldn't buy her shirt from obviously Nike, who were providing the kits, and there was a big backlash towards it. I think Nike have now come out and apologised over the situation. But I mean, what a way to kind of showcase why goalkeeping is still an incredible part of the game, and even though it's somebody that's a woman, it's still wanted, and like she's obviously got a huge fan base now as well after having such an incredible tournament. But she was incredible in that final. Like the penalty save is fantastic. Like the penalty's actually not too bad. We'll get on to penalties later on in this episode, where I think you can maybe kind of talk about the penalty taker. But in this one, I thought the penalty was actually pretty decent, and it is just a fantastic save. You described it really well, Mikey, as it was kind of gobbled up, and it really
not my
was.
words. I can't remember who it was that I was reading, but yeah, literally just gobbled it up, and just like. Yeah, I think she just embodies that fighting spirit, doesn't she? And she's the best goalkeeper in the world. It's mad that her shirt wasn't available. But yeah, I think, like you said, Dukes, I think Spain just absolutely outclassed England. It reminded... I can't remember a final in which, an international final where one team has been so dominant. Like, it really did remind me of, like, the... Del Bosque men's Spanish teams in the 2010s, like that final against Italy, I think at the Euros when they won 4-0. It was just class above. And you talk about playing through the press, like Aitana Bonmati in the midfield. I think she completed double the dribbles in that game than anyone else. Like, just absolutely class. And I think on the balance of the tournament as well, like I think what was disappointing for me was that, like, watching that semi-final, I think the semi-final win against Australia was like England. It felt like England were peaking at the right time. Like that 3-1 win was just so awesome, following what had been, some quite nervy games, especially that Nigeria game, which England probably deserved to lose. It felt like England were peaking at the right time under Wiegmann. They've been such a good tournament team, but when you look on the balance, like Spain have been pretty awesome. Aside from that defeat against Japan, Spain have been pretty awesome throughout. So I think they deserve the.
And look, we've got to give a shout out to England, right? Getting to the World Cup final in general is an incredible achievement.
First time since '66.
Doing it without your captain in Leo Williamson, who's obviously sadly injured. Doing it without your top goal scorer in the Euros in Beth Mead.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Frank Kirby.
Frank Kirby being missing. Like, you add these three to the side as well, and the side just gets stronger and stronger.
That's true.
And who knows? Maybe in the next 4 years or the next 2 years, once we go back to the Euros, we might see even more international competition. I think the other side of it, and this is kind of not just with England, it's been the entire World Cup. It's been great to see the women's football kind of grow and have this fantastic growth we've seen over the past month or so. Casual fans becoming really getting into it. People who might not have necessarily watched a women's football game happily and wanting and engaging and watching England, and not just England, other international sides too. I mean, looking at people getting up at 7 a.m. in the morning, 8 a.m. in the morning to go to the pub or to these venues, whatever it might be, to watch this final is fantastic. And something that actually, if you'd have said that maybe 4 years ago, 5-6 years ago, people might not have believed.
I mean, I remember where was it, 2019 when England went out to the USA in the semi-finals. I remember being in a pub. They had it on. No one was watching it. It was. I think the general. I think the Euros win last year was huge.
Yeah.
But then it's not just England though. You think about like Australia.
Yeah.
Like, I think the defeat to England. Oh no, the quarter-final win against France was. I think it was definitely the most watched sporting event on TV in Australia since the 2000 Sydney Olympics.
Wow.
It may have been the most watched thing on TV, but I'm not sure. But it was definitely the most watched sporting event, which is just that is incredible in itself. And actually, I was speaking to a friend on WhatsApp on Saturday morning, and he lives in Australia. He has an Australian girlfriend, and that was the first subject that came up was us beating them. So it's as a spectacle, as a phenomenon, like the Women's World Cup is, it feels, this tournament felt so significant.
Yeah, I think it's what the Women's World Cup has been criticised for in the past is very uneven matches, and we didn't see that this time at all. We saw teams like Jamaica, Colombia, etc. go much further in this tournament than they ever have. And another thing that gets criticised is women's goalkeeping. And I thought the standard of goalkeeping in this World Cup was absolutely excellent. Not just Mary Earps, but Mackenzie Arnold, the Australian goalkeeper, Musovic from Chelsea, who's the Swedish goalkeeper, who had that outstanding game against the USA. And there were so many shocks, and it was great to see some of the established order. Germany not make it out of the groups. USA crash out early, and it just led to a really excellent tournament that I think everyone thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, I think Australia as well. Shout out for them for hosting it. I think they did a fantastic job too. And New Zealand, yes. And Serena Wiegmann. I mean, what woman. She just continues to impress. The way she carries herself, the way she conducts herself, the way she manages her team, I think is fantastic, and a huge credit to England and the FA for how they deal with things. So unlucky England. Congratulations, Spain.
We're
on
coming for it in 4 years.
The World Cup, indeed.
Hopefully, Wiegmann's still there.
Yes, fingers crossed.
They got contracts up in 2025, isn't it? So we'll see.
I think they better be putting that everything possible to
the US apparently.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Okay then. Now, of course, the Women's World Cup final happened on Sunday, but another game that happened later on as well was Chelsea versus West Ham at the Olympic Stadium. Rough, guys. Been rough. I thought we'd got past this last season. I thought we got past this, and it felt like I was watching a game from last year. Not quite, actually. I think it's a little bit too harsh.
Well, Chelsea, I think, were the better team in the first half overall.
Yes, I think the thing is, I feel like I've watched that game versus Chelsea versus West Ham away a million times, where West Ham don't want possession, they aren't dominating the ball, but they're playing the way they want to play, and they're doing it well, and they're getting these set pieces with James Ward-Prowse on them. It's just ridiculous.
He's actually the perfect signing.
He
for
really
them.
is. He really is.
I think didn't appreciate actually that.
Pat on Sunday, I think Pat's always been a little bit overly critical of James Ward-Prowse in general, and sometimes when he's done it once, he'll kind of double down on it.
That's fine. He's like a relatively limited central midfielder, but set pieces are like a
Really
very
best in the world at it,
underrated
yeah.
element of like attacking play, aren't they?
It's
And a big
West
part
incredible.
of Moyes' game.
Yeah, massive part of Moyes.
It's incredible. Now, if you didn't know the score, Chelsea lost 3-1 to West Ham, and I think there were positive signs of Chelsea. I think also overall this looked like a Chelsea side that haven't played very often together. What I can't quite work out is in pre-season we were playing this 4-2-3-1 practically every game for every minute. And we've come into the Premier League season, and I thought, okay, against Liverpool, he's going to do this 3 at the back when in possession, and this is what it's just about Liverpool to make sure that Trent isn't getting forward, and due to their lack of midfield. And so when West Ham obviously came along this weekend, I was expecting us to go back to this 4-2-3-1, whether it was Gallagher and Enzo. I didn't quite expect Caicedo to start in that game, but it would be this 4-2-3-1, and it wasn't. It was this 3 at the back formation again in possession, where Chilwell is this left winger basically, and Chilwell is fantastic going forward. He really is, but he's not a left winger. He is not a left winger. He's a left wing back at best. I think we've seen obviously the likes of Pochettino wanting to use Ian Maatson as well in a winger role, but there were positive signs in terms of, I thought Carney Jukwomenko when he was on the field was really strong.
Great
Took the
goal.
goal
Awesome
really
goal, yeah.
really well.
Sterling was great.
I thought that's Sterling's best game I've seen him in Chelsea
Yeah.
shirt. Honestly,
He looked so quick.
He looked so quick.
He looked
His
way quicker
ability
than
on the
normal.
ball.
It
was
reminded
more
me a
than
bit
his
of
dribble
it reminded me a
forwards.
bit of like old school Sterling when he was like when he had a bit more when he was given like more work to do at Man City, or even like at the Euros. I think it was interesting actually. Jamie Carragher on comms kind of he referenced, he was like, oh, remember Sterling, how good he was at that in that Euros tournament. It was like that was the kind of at least in the first half, that was the kind of performance he was giving, like picking the ball up super deep, like going
Just
past
driving.
3 or 4, just driving so well.
And obviously Sterling won the penalty with some of these great dribblings. He completed 6 dribbles on the day. He really was incredible. Maybe we'll touch upon him in a minute, because I do want to talk about that penalty. Enzo Fernandez stepped up for it. Now, previous to this, Enzo Fernandez has taken 5 penalties and scored all 5. He'd never missed a penalty, apparently. But going into the season, it was the first time I was like, oh, I actually don't know who is our penalty taker. Mason Mount's now left. He kind of was at one point. And in pre-season, we hadn't had a penalty, so we didn't know who was going to do it. And Fernandez stepped up, and my God, I don't understand the thinking of these small steps and then just kind of going towards. You don't generate enough power. You don't generate enough power, and then that way you then have these shots that are kind of middling efforts that the keeper can kind of save pretty easily. And let's not take credit away from Areola. He did very, very well. But I just think Enzo Fernandez gave him the choice or the easier option to make the save when he didn't put any power behind it because of his technique. I don't know. Do you think there's any other penalty taker at Chelsea right now that should be taking them?
I mean, Nicholas Jackson's your centre forward. I can't remember whether he was Villarreal's penalty taker last year.
I wouldn't have thought so.
But I mean, that feels like the obvious choice to me.
Chelsea have had an issue with penalty takers for a little while now.
Well, penalties have been a big part of your scoring in recent seasons. Like Jorginho's goals from the spot were pretty crucial.
It was when Jorginho was about, it was kind of a no-brainer, wasn't it?
I do agree with you about these overcomplicated run-ups. I think Salah's got a really weird run-up as well, and I don't think it helps him.
When it works, it's great.
Well, exactly, but you're so open to criticism as soon as it doesn't work.
Exactly.
I just prefer, going 3 or 4 steps back, rushing up as hard as you can and blasting it.
Straight run up, that's what I like. Good straight run up.
That's kind of what it was.
No
That's
idea.
kind of what it was.
No idea.
And then it was just like, this slow technique.
But no, I always think, if you're in a team, I think it's always a little bit embarrassing if your centre forward doesn't step up to take the penalties. I mean, Watkins yesterday, Douglas Luiz takes the penalties at Villa. I just think it's such a good opportunity for forwards to get an extra 5-6 goals a year.
Well, you think about it, right? That's the whole thing, right? Forwards are meant to be these players who are always hungry for goals and that's
most confident,
and for some, especially for someone in Jackson's position, you think, look, you can get your first one here and then that could start everything. I actually thought he had a pretty good game overall for Chelsea. Again, made brilliant runs in behind. He actually won a penalty but was just offside in the first half. There were good performances. Again, Raheem Sterling, as you mentioned, it was definitely his best performance I've seen him in a Chelsea shirt. Was creative too. He put some fantastic balls into the box that just needed somebody to be there at the right moment to tap them in. There were other performances where I think it was welcome to the Premier League, or you'll learn from this. I thought Colwill against Antonio, there were a couple of moments where it was maybe not somebody he's featured too much against. Obviously, he played for Brighton last year, but it was maybe in a slightly different system where he wasn't required to deal with the kind of bigger striker as much, or more the physicality of a striker like Antonio did. Disassi as well, somebody that I think got bossed a few times. And if they can learn from that, I think it's okay having these errors now at the beginning of the season, but it's about learning from them and
learn quick.
And learning quick for sure. Even the goal that Antonio scores for the second one, I thought Disassi's just like, I feel like at the moment with defenders there's an obsession with kind of backing off and kind of letting the striker make the decision. There's a bit too much space there,
wasn't there?
And exactly, if you close him down, you can kind of stop that shot happening so on. Like, don't get me wrong, the shot is amazing. Like, it's got to be a fantastic shot.
But Colwell got
to
spun
beat the keeper
in the build-up as well.
Exactly.
I didn't think it was great from either of them.
There are errors that can be learnt from, and I think Poch will hopefully kind of take it from that and be like, look, this. You have to learn from this. Like, it's okay making an error once, but we can't be making these kind of errors again. Malo Gusto, by the way, thought he was very, very good on the right back flank too.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a disaster, to be honest. I mean, you conceded a set piece, you conceded a penalty, and then Antonio scores a really nice goal from a really fairly acute angle, and from a long way out. It's just a really nice strike. I thought you are showing way more intent to score than you did last year. It feels a lot more dynamic, but at the same time, there's just a lot of new players to bed in. I think. I tweeted it yesterday, but only Thiago Silva and Chilwell have started more than 25 league games for Chelsea. And if you look at that backline, Sanchez, Disassi, Colwell, Gusto, they're all starting their first or second games for Chelsea. Yeah. It's just going to take a while to bed in. Unfortunately, Caicedo comes on, gives away a penalty.
So what did you think of... So actually, the second half I didn't get to watch too much of. What did we think of Caicedo's, I guess, 15, 20 minutes? Because I saw some people on Twitter, a lot of Liverpool fans, absolutely ripping into him.
They would.
One people like marking every single mistake he's made, whatever, that's football Twitter for you. And yeah, pettiness, whatever. What did you think of overall? Do you think the occasion was quite big for him? Obviously, the moment.
Well, he hasn't played coming on pre-season. I don't think he's played really at all. I think I saw it was his first game in 2 months, and it probably looked like it, to be honest. That's just going to take a little bit of time. I imagine he might start next weekend. It depends how training goes this week. Luton on Friday. That's a great game to start Caicedo in. Luton, unfortunate for them not having a game in their second week. So annoying that the Premier League table for the last few years has been completely ruined by COVID and various delays, and already it's uneven. I just hate that. So I'm annoyed that Luton couldn't play their game this weekend, and I expect Chelsea to have a much more comprehensive performance. I actually thought you created enough chances to win the game. There's just a few sloppy mistakes at the back. I didn't think it was a disaster.
Okay.
Arnold had a really good game. Yeah. I think we have to shout out West Ham as well.
Definitely.
I think Paquetá, although everything hanging over him at the moment, didn't seem phased. I thought he was awesome. Like Aguerd, great header, although
got absolute
mismatch with Conor Gallagher, got sent off in the end. So yeah, I think and the atmosphere in the London Stadium was electric as it would be. I think West Ham were also kind of worthy of the.
Most definitely. Credit 100% has to go West Ham and David Moyes and his tactics. I think they played it fantastically.
Yeah. Of course, James Ward-Prowse. I know we spoke about him already, but two assists
and a brilliant addition to this West Ham side for sure. I think they could slightly be underdogs if they play this way. I think what will be interesting in games against, say, Forest or teams that maybe more the level last season compared to where they might be expected to have a bit more of the ball and a bit more domination, and we still they might still be making more signings as well. So
I'd be surprised if they didn't.
This squad could be changing. I
think defensively they still need work.
I think Mavropanos has now been confirmed. He was excellent in the Bundesliga in the last few years. I think most interceptions last year in the Bundesliga. Reads the game really well. Aerial monster, significantly younger and cheaper than Maguire. I actually really like that signing. Although he probably will take longer to adapt than Maguire would, given the fact that when he was at Arsenal, he didn't really get too much of a chance.
I wonder what they're going to do as well on the right flank I thought Kufau looked like he had
could always play Johnson there, Ben Johnson. But yeah, I always thought, Kufau might... I always thought he'd potentially be upgradable, but they haven't gone there yet. Yeah,
very true. Very true. Very finally, quickly touching on Chelsea once more, Mudryk. He came on... I saw him getting a lot of heat. Again, this was kind of during the minutes that I wasn't able to watch, unfortunately. I did see he had this one chance where the ball kind of was floated and it ended up kind of going out the stadium by the looks of it from the shore. I think I saw Joe in the chat, but the ball went backwards. How do we feel about his display so far? I feel like he's somebody that just needs confidence.
Yeah, again, every game that I see him, every cameo that I see him, he does have a wow moment. Yeah. It's like just lacking a bit of composure in front of goal at the moment, or composure in terms of his final pass. I do think he's worth persisting with. But yeah, again, it's just a little bit. There was a big chance in the Liverpool game as well when Nicholas Jackson runs about 70 metres, plays it through to him. He just lacks a bit of composure, and it needs to start happening fast because people are pretty ruthless in this league.
Definitely.
And big money came in January, very difficult, and people were defending him, and rightly so, I thought, last season, because he arrived having not played much football. The situation in Ukraine was obviously horrendous, but he now needs to start delivering on that promise, and at the moment he's just lacking a bit of composure in the final third.
Okay, well, we'll see. Luton, maybe he'll get a start. I thought Noni Madueke actually added a little bit as well, considering he's not played much pre-season too. But that is Chelsea. Let us know what your thoughts on them are in the comments below, and on West Ham. How do you think West Ham will be finishing this year? Because I know there will be a lot of happy Hammers fans in the comments too.
Atkins going mental in the comments.
Yeah, West Ham are massive supposedly. Tottenham Hotspur versus Manchester United at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Mikey. 2-0 loss. I'm coming to you because obviously one of our resident Manchester United fans. What do you think? Because first half, thought United were actually unlucky. And if you look at XG, United were unlucky. They should have scored about 2 goals.
Yeah, I mean, Fernandes has to score, doesn't he? I thought Vicario, great save off Rashford in the first half as well. Rashford's also should score, although he's offside from the Bruno. Rabona. If I'm honest though, I found it hard to care about United this weekend. I think after the stuff that came out in the Athletic articles about the way the club's handled the Mason Greenwood situation, I think it's I don't see how the club can expect people to support them, or at least not question their support of the club, given how horrendously they handled the situation. I think the Athletic put out a poll, or did a survey, and I think 20% of United fans who responded said that they would stop supporting the club if Greenwood was to come back in. It feels like they've panicked in the light of this, and there's, we obviously don't know what the final decision is now, but the fact that they were ready to bring him back in, the fact that, supposedly Ten Hag, John Murta were keen to bring him back in. Yeah, it's just a pretty depressing situation, to be honest. And I don't know how a club the size of Man United have not handled this in a better way. Again, I think something like 80% of fans say that they are in no way happy with the way that the club have communicated the situation. And yeah, I mean, and this is obviously just coming from a fan perspective. There's been so little attention given to the alleged victim in all of this, even from a player welfare standard point of view. It feels like it hasn't been very well thought out. But yeah, so yeah, I found it kind of difficult to care about United on the pitch this week, but yeah, and I think, yeah, given the problems that we saw at Wolves last week, it wasn't an overly surprising result. I think United were better than they were against Wolves, but that midfield is just still too easy to play through. Thought Pape Sarr was awesome, really, really good. Basuma as well, another excellent game. But yeah, I think Ange Postecoglou couldn't have asked for a better opening 2 weeks from Spurs. The fact that Pape Sarr and Vicario, who obviously has just been brought in, both excellent, I think speaks volumes about the direction this Spurs team is going to. Pape Sarr, he only just turned 20, was it a couple of months ago? He already looks like a really, really solid Premier League central midfielder. It's rare for a central midfielder at that age. I know we live in the age of Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo and everything, and Bellingham. There's a lot of young central midfielders, but I think it's easy now to think, oh yeah, that's fine. But a central midfielder, really hitting their stride at that age is still a relatively rare thing. And yeah, I think it shows that he's already got an imprint on this team, and which is pretty mad given just how terrible their pre-season was, how calamitous it was, the amount of games they couldn't play. The illness. This Spurs team are really, really rocking, and Yeah, I think it's a really good time to be a Spurs fan at the moment. Your team's playing good football. They're getting like decent results. Players look really happy. Despite the fact that Kane has left, it does not seem like an unsettled camp in any way. Props to Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
I do think maybe defensively there are still question marks.
But that's fine
slightly,
though. That's
and
fine.
It will develop.
That's what's going to happen.
Exactly. And as you said, Van der Ven still incredibly young, still adapting to the Premier League, and obviously they kept clean sheets, so they did very, very well to do that in the end. But yeah, I thought first half Manchester United had moments where they probably should have put the ball in the back of the net, and then if they do that, could have been a very, very different game to see how Ange's Spurs side can come back in a game. That would have been quite interesting to watch, but that didn't happen. I want to also give a shout out. We've given a shout out to Sarr. He was incredible, especially for his age. Shout out to Basuma. Like, he now, considering obviously how much midfielders are going for in this market, and they got him for what, 30 million last summer. Crazy. Now obviously he's had to deal with the whole Antonio Conte situation last year and not being played and not fitting quite into that squad. May have not fit into that squad. He's the perfect fit for this Ange system. He really is. The way he turns on the ball, the way he is so great defensively. 5 tackles, 3 clearances, 1 interception. His passing was fantastic. Brilliant as well with his dribbling too, taking the ball forward. He does just look like that perfect midfielder that can do a bit of everything, and looked like the most Basuma Brighton performance we've seen of him at Spurs yet. I think he was somebody that was also quite fantastic too. I don't know what you thought, Diggs.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I don't think it reflects well on Conte that he deemed Bissouma and Sarr pretty much unusable last year. Even after Sarr had that amazing game against Milan in the Champions League, he barely got a look in towards the end of the season. Bissouma supposedly had massive faults in his game, I think was the quote, or was not solid enough defensively, I think was the issue. Doesn't look like that's a problem at all now, and they've still got Bentancur to come back into that area. Højbjerg looks like he might not leave now, and I think if he doesn't leave, he's going to get some minutes at various stages. I thought Skip played pretty well against Brentford as well. Udogie has played really well in his opening 2 games, popping into midfield as well. They had Pedro Porro, playing instead of Emerson Royale, who had a really good game in the first week. The one concern with Spurs at the moment is I'm not sure this new system potentially suits Son Heung-min that effectively. I think he's been really uninvolved so far, because with Udogie and Emerson Royale or Porro inverting, Kulusevski and Son start so wide, and Son just doesn't feel that dynamic and feel that connected with the team at the moment. I also think Richarlison had a really difficult game again. He was kind of flopping around in the box like a sort of, half-dead salmon at points. And I just thought, it was slightly disappointing from him. He needs to get going in this side, because it hasn't really materialised just yet. But I totally agree with Mikey. I think the signs are really good, and they're trending in the right direction. I mean, their possession stats, their pass accuracy, their shots per game, their XG per game, all going massively up. I know it's only 2 games so far. Their shots against per game are higher than last year, and their XG against per game is higher than last year as well. So as we said at the start of the season, it's going to be a little bit chaotic. They're going to concede some chances. Teams, But I think Spurs fans are just loving the entertainment. It felt like the North London Stadium was the most raucous it's been potentially since, the first year of it opening.
No, 100%. I think there's an interesting idea, I guess, about obviously when they had Jose, when they had Conte, these guys who were brought in to essentially win something, they aren't thinking about, I need to give minutes to this 19-year-old who could become really good, but he's also going to have to adapt for a long time. I guess their whole thought process is, and this obviously isn't a fact, just basically putting it out there, is, okay, well, I just need to have players that I can trust. I don't need to develop and just try and win something this year. Whereas with Ange, especially with Harry Kane leaving, I think there is this level of agreement with Spurs fans that this is a season of development, of like having players come through and give them minutes and see where he can go, and building this philosophy and system at Spurs, which has allowed us to see Sarr already perform so well, Basuma perform so well, Udogie now on the left flank, Pedro Porro might see Mickey van der Ven. I think it's
only thing was we saw Maddison leave in a protective boot, I believe. I'm not sure whether there's been confirmation about how serious
apparently
that is.
Not as bad as maybe first feared. I think it was almost kind of like just for precautionary.
Okay.
Because he was incredible. He's their best player. By far. Oh, maybe not by far, but very, very good for sure. Okay, we'll move on to our next game. Wolves versus Brighton. We've headed to the Midlands. Brighton, top of the Premier League.
Ooh.
It felt like this was going to happen soon enough.
Yeah.
with the trajectory they were going on. Obviously playing in Europe this year. Won their game against Luton last week 4-1. Won their game against Wolves this week 4-1. They do like to put up the goals, that's for sure. What do we think of? Firstly, we'll get to Wolves in a second, because I actually thought they were a little bit unlucky. But we'll start with Brighton. Can they win the league, Mikey?
Well, they certainly can. They're top of the league. 8-2 goal difference. Scored double that anyone else has scored so far, I think, or maybe not actually. But they've definitely scored double that
their own goals.
That Man City have scored. And I think I put this down. Saw on Match of the Day. I think they're the first team since Man United in 17-18 to score 4 goals in their opening in each of their opening 2 games. So yeah, like. Just and like, you know, like Karim Matoma, who was like a bit quiet towards the end of last season, actually. Just that goal, like that feels like already an early contender for goal of the season. I do love it. I do love you know, right, I know he didn't like necessarily beat that many guys, but just the trajectory of that run, it was just so beautiful. And the finish, it was just, yeah, just absolutely electric. And Ciso, like 2 wonderful assists for Solly March. Just like how, like the level that player could get to, you know, he's so young still. Super exciting. And to put away a Wolves team away who were actually so impressive at Old Trafford last week. I think, you know, you can't, you know, understate that. Like, this Brighton team are really, really awesome, and you know, if we see another month of this, then you have to consider them serious top 4 contenders. I mean, they were actually top 4 contenders last season, but yeah, it's just wonderful to see. And like someone like Matoma, it's just, I think that the kind of ability of De Zerbi and the Brighton setup in general, because like, let's not forget that Graham Potter was pretty good at doing this before. It's like, I think Matoma as an example, like when he came into, I just haven't, like, aside from the last kind of month or so of the 22-23 season, he came into that Brighton side around October, November last year properly, and instantly was like heavily involved in almost every single goal they scored. And to think that he's now like looks, you know, maybe double the player that he was back then is just pretty frightening. Like, I think we could see him have like a really world-class season this year. But yeah, and again, like someone like Solly March, who again like had an excellent year last year. Now just looks solidly. It's not like he just had a good season last year. Like, he is genuinely an awesome attacker. I think he was asked after the game like why he hasn't been selected for England yet, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea why." It might happen.
Gareth was at the game.
I like the confidence.
Yeah. And I think he was a bit tongue in cheek about it.
Of course.
You know, but also, yeah, like I'm sure he does think like, why am I not in an England squad? And I wouldn't be surprised if he does, if he makes the next one. This Brighton team is just, I mean, we've obviously spoken about them a lot already, but like to see them begin this season in the fashion in which they have, you know, especially considering that they sold, you know, £150 million worth of midfield in the summer. Yeah, it just goes to show how adaptable they've been.
Well, you see it even in this game, right? The way they can just swap in different midfielders. We saw Billy Gilmour start this game, and that's obviously different to what was happening in the game against Luton. And there's just no difference. Like, there's no difference. It just tells you how incredible the system is and how amazing it is to work under De Zerbi. It gets you to buy in and believe in how he does everything. We'll touch upon Wolves then, Doogie, because I mentioned it earlier. They are currently leading the chart for XG and actual goals, the difference between them. They should have scored 4 so far over the last 2 games. They've scored 1. Then I think when you look at the score of a 4-1 loss, it seems like, oh my God, Gary O'Neill's, what's he done? You know, they are playing against an incredible Brighton. But actually, if you watch the game, they had good chances, they were creating moments, and maybe things aren't as bad for Wolves as first feared.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, the frustrating thing for them is they've now lost Mateus Nunes, who got sent off.
A silly red card.
He's
as well,
actually started the season much better than he was playing last year. Cunha as well was pretty bright again. I think the biggest chance that they've missed was probably at the back stick from Cunha when he hit the post against Man United at Old Trafford. But I think Wolves... It's an interesting strategy to become more attack-minded. I mean, it probably does need to happen, but they have lost, I think, a lot of quality at the back as well in Nathan Collins. And I know Craig Dawson has been pretty good on occasion there, but it feels like I think Nathan Collins has got more to go, definitely in his career, and a much higher ceiling than Dawson as well. Wolves, I always felt over the last few years that they almost needed a perfect transition to happen to score a goal, whereas now I think there are some other sources of creativity in that side. But there's big pressure on Cunha because it was an obligation to buy for £50 million. That's basically their entire summer budget. And Sasa Kaladzic will come in. Hopefully he'll be able to get up to his Bundesliga levels and contribute as well. But Cunha, he's basically the main source now, and that is a certain amount of pressure. He's never been a really elite goal scorer. I think he's a really fun player to watch in terms of his dribbling, in terms of his turn of pace, etc. But he's never hit huge numbers. And this season, he's going to have to hit at least 10 Premier League goals, and he hasn't got off to the best of starts in terms of actually putting it in the back of the net.
Okay, very interesting. Well, we're talking about one team we're maybe possibly slightly worried for. Let's talk about a team that I'm definitely worried for. Everton versus Aston Villa, or actually Aston Villa versus Everton. We'll firstly start with the Midlands club, Deegi. Aston Villa lost 5-1 to Newcastle last year, and then delivered last week. Apologies.
It's already been a long season.
Yeah, Jesus. And obviously delivered their own whipping this time, 4-0 win against Everton. Great way to come back. I think. Obviously, it's just showcased maybe how good of a side Newcastle was last week, but they themselves are a pretty decent side too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that display against Newcastle, they had to bring Pau Torres off the bench. Diego Carlos got his first minutes, I think, since an Achilles injury as well. Newcastle were lethal towards the end of that game with Barnes and Callum Wilson clearly keen to make an impact in that game, and maybe the scoreline slightly flattered Newcastle ever so slightly. I thought actually Aston Villa prior to half-time were probably the better side in the sort of 15 minutes leading up to that. But yeah, this was a great way to bounce back. Pressure was on Emery ever so slightly after that, I think, because so many people had said, maybe Aston Villa can challenge for the Champions League. But this was brilliant. I think Leon Bailey, it's probably his best display in a Villa shirt so far. Not just beating his man, but picking out really good passes, particularly for McGinn's opener.
Good goal.
And Moussa Diaby looks absolutely electric so far. I'm so glad I went so hot on him during the summer. I think he's going to make a massive, massive difference. But yeah, Everton making catastrophic errors at the back. Michael Keane involved in 2 of them. I actually felt slightly unfortunate for him, or sorry for him, for the Ashley Young throw-in, because he kind of undersells the throw-in, and then Michael Keane can't get across, and Duran goes through and scores his first goal for Aston Villa. But the first one, where he tries to clear with his right foot and the ball just breaks perfectly to Leon Bailey, not good at all. So massive issues for Everton without Iwobi now. Looks like he picked up a hamstring injury.
Yeah.
Calvert-Lewin went off with one of those cartoon style like eggs on his face after a collision. So that's a bit of a concern as well.
Yeah, that looks really
I saw a post actually from Calvert-Lewin's dad, bless him, where he goes, it's for the past few years it's so hard seeing your son basically have this dream of being this footballer and having the potential, because I think back when Calvert-Lewin first started, we were all super excited about this guy, and now his first game or second game of the season, and he's out again with injury. And it's just so tough to take, and you can understand. And apparently he wants it so much, and obviously he tries as much as he can to stay fit. But when your body is just kind of saying no. It must be very difficult to watch on, especially as his father.
Because at one stage, Mikey, he was sort of Kane's heir to be, or like
pretty much. I mean, we're talking about. I mean, there's been like conversations in the last kind of week, especially since Alexander Isak, his brace against Villa last week, about like who is the second best striker in the league after Haaland. We even put it out as a poll on Saturday, and it had a really quite big response, quite a passionate response from the fans. And I mean, if Calvert-Lewin had stayed for the last 2 years, he'd be very much in that conversation. You think about because it's weird because he came through incredibly promising, and then actually had a couple of years where didn't really know what his best position was, exactly what his skill set was, whether he was just a very good aerial threat or whether he could add more to his game. And then under Ancelotti, he just exploded, didn't he? And just looked absolutely awesome. There was a period where he was basically scoring a goal a game, I think.
Yeah.
And then the fact that these injuries then came, and then unlucky in this game, hopefully he kind of makes a speedy recovery. But yeah, it was a nasty bump, wasn't it?
Everton are going to need him, that's for sure, because goodness gracious.
This is the problem, isn't it? It's just you look at this Everton team, it's just it's just the result of little to no investment.
Yeah,
but to what already was quite a mismatched squad as well, and it's just you back Sean Dyche to keep them up because he has, he's never been, when was the last time
I don't know,
got
because even Sean Dyche now, I think obviously this is Everton's 2 losses now in the first 2 games, the third time they've done that in a row, losing their 2 opening games of the season. I just think when you're watching this Everton side, if they've lost Iwobi, who at some points people I think were he's their best creative asset. Yeah. They've lost now DCL, but that's kind of happened. Obviously, they've kind of got a bit used to that at least. I just look at them and I go, where are the goals going to come from? Where's the creativity going to come from? I thought Garner was okay in midfield, but apart from that, I just feel like Sean Dyche, I know again he's been able to kind of get them out of the relegation zone last year, perform these miracles. But there's a certain point where they've rode their luck now 2 seasons in a row. Yeah. Third time's the charm, as they say, right? It could be very, very tough. And obviously they don't have the money to spend, and there's all this talk about the stadium that's happening as well in the background. It's rough. It's really, really rough. And the second, it wouldn't shock me. Maybe Sean Dyche might be my first manager to go.
Really? I'd be surprised by that. I think he'll last until the second half of the season, to be honest. But it does slightly concern me that their main target are Che Adams, who had a really difficult time converting chances in the Premier League, and Wilfred Gnonto, who looked excellent in fits and bursts in the Premier League last year, but hasn't really had a pre-season at Leeds. He's now been frozen out that squad for trying to force a move. So they're basically targeting championship players. And their other striker signing was, I think he's called Chimitri, who they signed from Sporting. Yeah. CP, not got a lot of experience either. So Everton, I think, will be right down there. I had them 17th. I had Wolves 18th. I might switch them over in my predictions.
I just think with the back line of I saw a thing, bless him. I saw a thing that came out and said, is Michael Keane the worst centre back in the league?
So brutal,
and after that performance, it's not been great, has it at all? Okay, though, that is our Midlands game wrapped up. Let's go to our team of the week then. We're bringing it back, where we pick our team of the week over the games that have happened. Obviously, Arsenal have not played yet. Crystal Palace versus Arsenal is tonight, so no players will feature
really
from that. It is going to be an interesting one. I mean, I'd like to see maybe a possible slip-up, just to kind of take the eyes away from Chelsea. But also, at the same time, I need Ramsdale or Raya to keep a clean sheet, and for Ben White to probably get an assist at least for my
I've
draft.
got loads of Arsenal players. I need them all to bang.
So fingers crossed, I guess, then for my draft. Let's move to our team of the week, though. We're going to start in goal with Areola. I think we kind of covered him a decent amount earlier. Made some fantastic saves against Chelsea. Obviously saved the penalty, but also made a fantastic last 10 minutes of the game save, where it takes the deflection off of the West Ham centre-backs, bottom left. Brilliant. Well done to him. And actually, to be fair, the goal he does concede, I don't know if there are many keepers that probably save that for where Chukwuemeka's that close into the box, and so many defenders in front of him. We go to our back line, and we've got a little bit of a Garth Crooks inspired defence here. Yeah. We've got Rico Henry, Van Dijk, and Estepinian.
That's as Garth Crooks as it gets. Back three with 2 left backs.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
Yeah. Obviously we haven't actually touched upon the Brentford and the Liverpool game. We did touch upon Brighton. Fantastic, Estepinian was in that game. Okay, we didn't really touch upon Liverpool. So let's quickly say our things now. 3-1 win against Bournemouth. McAllister red card. Quickly, red card, no red card?
No red card for me.
Not red card.
Crazy
decision. So bad for him.
I wonder if that'll get rescinded in the end.
A few refereeing errors this early in the season.
Yeah.
All I'm saying, Souček was in the box. Souček was in the box. Very, very quickly.
Romero handball.
Very, very quickly. Romero handball too. We didn't even talk about that. No. Quickly then, actually,
handball's boring these days.
Handball, Romero's one?
I don't care, like I can see it's not as clear cut as some people. Like it was it was coming at him quite fast. I think in the age of VAR it is a handball. I think in the previous age it's more 50-50. But yeah, I'm just bored speaking about handballs, to be honest. We've been speaking about them for the last 2 years now.
I reckon it'll probably continue as well. You think it is a handball?
Yeah, I mean, it's the women's game, but we saw that handball given against Kira Walsh.
Yes, we did.
In a much more natural position than Romero. I know it's the women's game, but it shouldn't matter. The rules are the rules. So
I think with Kira Walsh, it was her hand was moving towards and it was also quite slow as well, so it did feel a bit more obvious. I mean, but it did not need them to spend 7 minutes to make that decision. That was ridiculous. But Liverpool, I mean, we've got Van Dijk in there, but the Liverpool back line was so dodgy in those opening 10-15 minutes. My God, really didn't start well. Again, a symptom of that midfield not really having settled at all. Obviously, McAllister starting at the base of midfield once again. You'd expect that Endo will probably start the next game,
especially if
of course. Almost certainly will start the next game. Thought he looked quite good after coming on, actually, Endo.
Did you see Klopp's video last week where he's welcoming Endo to the club? And he's like, we really, really need you. We've got a good team, but it's super offensive or something.
Offensive. Something tells me that he's not going to have too much license to get forward. No. And I think he's very much going to go back to what he was at Stuttgart maybe 4 seasons ago, where he was just a tackle monster. But I mean, attacking wise, once again, Liverpool are just so exciting, aren't they? Soboslai, really, really good. Great to see Luis Diaz score a great goal. I think really Luis Diaz is in for a huge season. Obviously, Salah missed the pen, but good reactions in.
Didn't think it was a pen either, by the way. Think it's a crazy dive.
Soboslai,
I think it's a crazy dive.
He got the legs up and the arms up.
Yeah, it was Tom Daly levels of gold.
But it's also but it's also a good dive, isn't it? It's like the contact was there.
There was contact.
There was contact, and it was a mistake.
Super theatrical.
It was kind of a mistake from the defender, wasn't it? So I don't have too many qualms with that.
Soboslai also created Jota's goal as well with a really nice shot from distance.
Yeah, he did.
That Neto couldn't gather cleanly. I thought Liverpool, they recovered well from a dodgy start, also going down to 10 men. I think they'll score a lot of goals this year. I think they actually have potential to be the highest goal scorers in the league.
Ooh,
I think with KDB out and Man City sort of finding their way going forward a little bit, I think Liverpool have the potential to outscore them.
Well, we'll see as well when Jeremy Doku might be lifting that blue shirt too. On to our midfield then. Szoboszlai, as you mentioned, Solly March, Bissouma and Phil Foden.
I put him in my team of the season.
You did?
On Sunday Vibes a few weeks ago, Phil Foden. Mainly to just spark some debate, because we'd been talking about him a lot on the FD WhatsApp group that week, and it was a bit of a joke, but I actually think it's quite a good shout now. He looks absolutely sensational.
It's almost like Pep's been listening in to our conversations with Joe and that recently about how
he's not the main
man and all this, and he's gone, all right,
he is the main man.
Play every minute I've got available for you now then, Phil. And he's been amazing. He really has. And that's the beauty with Phil Foden, is he can play whatever flank you want him to play. He can play midfield in whatever role you need him to play, and just do a brilliant job in every single one of them. And so I reckon we'll end up talking about Phil Foden a lot over the coming weeks.
And I think in the post-match they were asking him, what's it like to go in and out of the side, and he said, it is tough. I want to play every week. And he looks really, really hungry and really dynamic, and just looks at peak Phil Foden fitness and energy.
But that's incredible, considering when you've won the treble, when you've won the Premier League a million times. I do reckon there is a bit of you that might start to get a little bit not bored is the wrong word, but lose that same level of hunger as if you've never won that kind of stuff. So to see him already still have that is really strong to see.
The only thing is, you say that, and he might be thinking of, you might be hinting at, he might want to go elsewhere and play, but there's nowhere better in the Premier League, at least until Guardiola leaves. And Barcelona aren't really an option for top players to go to now, because they just can't really afford them. And Real Madrid have such a stacked midfield already. Man City are in a great position with Foden, where he's really unlikely to ever leave.
Yeah, no, he is incredible, and as I said, I reckon we'll be talking about him loads. Very quickly then, touching upon Man City Newcastle. I thought Man City were incredible. I really did, honestly. I thought it was one of their best games since probably when they played Real Madrid in the Champions League last year. I thought they just dominated everything really, really well. I managed to keep Newcastle quite quiet. I saw a lot of Newcastle fans afterwards being like,
That's
kind
the
of
gulf.
Yeah, like that's the difference there between kind of winning the league and I guess finishing in the top 4. And kind of, they've just had the realization that kind of every other top 6 fan has had over the last few years of how do you beat these guys. And so yeah, no, look, Man City getting 2 wins out of 2 already. I think it's going to be a long season for the rest of us. Maybe they'll be going for that 100-point mark, and I'm sure we're talking upon them a lot as well. Bailey, Visser and Mitoma are our front 3 in this 3-4-3
Visser could have been Mbeumo as well. I don't know. I think they just started really well, Brentford. And I want to get a Brentford player.
With no Tony as well. With no Tony, they've done incredibly well.
Yeah.
Those two.
He's super clinical finish as well. Fulham looked exactly like we thought Fulham would look without João Palhinha and Mitrovic. Worrying times for Henry Hill and his gang.
We'll be interested to see how Fulham spend in the market because they will be needing a striker now unless they believe that Vinicius is the guy to lead the line. But that is the end of Monday Vibes, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you've not checked out yesterday's Sunday Vibes, then do that. It was a great episode. Me, Doogie and Patrick Van Straten talking about...
I can't remember now.
Good,
Panic Vibes,
because I forgot at the same time. That's why I wanted to throw it to you. Also coming out this week, we've got Transfer Talk. We're also going to have Team Talk as well.
Wow.
And it's juicy. It's very juicy. So make sure you check that out on Wednesday. If you're not subscribed to Football Daily, then click the subscribe button. Want to watch more content? Then check the ones out that I said, or click the video on screen right now. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment on how you think your team did this weekend. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.